Yeah. Straight up, let's go. Welcome to Straight Up TJAY. Tap in, sit back, press replay. Been locked in with the Saints on a weekday. Now we talking every sport, every big play. Years on the grind, now we level up the view. From the dome to the world, get a better look at you. No script.
Hey, what's going on? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, and welcome to another edition of the Straight Up TJAY Podcast. Really do appreciate each and every one of you's time, and it's good to be back, man. Went on vacation last week, but we back at it once again, and thank you so much for allowing the Straight Up TJAY Podcast to be a part of your listening pleasure on this Monday afternoon. Shouts out to everyone in the chat right now. Shouts out to you. Really do appreciate you stopping by. Got a few topics that we're going to discuss. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Saints Hall of Fame. Two well-known New Orleans Saints have been inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame. And we're also going to be talking about a topic that pertains to the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings and their quarterback competition between Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy. Both quarterbacks are struggling a little bit during some of these offseason activities. We're going to break that down. But shouts out to everyone in the chat right now. If you're new to this channel, it's very simple. All you have to do is put your comments into the chat, and we would love to hear from you. But let's go ahead and get into it, man. Not going to waste anybody's time. Let's talk a little bit about the Saints Hall of Fame. First off, I want to say congratulations to former left tackle of the New Orleans Saints, Terron Armstead, and Mark Ingram, the running back. They were the latest inductees into the New Orleans Saints Hall of Fame. Both guys definitely deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And, you know, I've said this on several occasions here and across several platforms that I do talking about the Saints. You know, if you grew up in New Orleans and been a Saints fan like me, I grew up in the 90s where the Saints weren't that good. And to be honest with you, not many players were worth celebrating. But, you know, as I got older, and some of you are probably around this age group, but around 2006, that's when you started to see the Saints start to invest in players, and they became synonymous with the team. They became legends, may not be in a realm of the NFL. Some guys were able to break through that glass ceiling, but there were a few guys that were so meaningful to the organization. And when, you know, other NFL fans may look at those players, they may not think much of them, but, you know, to Saints fans, they mean everything. And like I said, there are several players that have been with the team that stood out. You know, Cam Jordan, who we have talked about countless times here, and, you know, is a guy that is worth recognizing, not only with the Saints Hall of Fame in the future, but the actual NFL Hall of Fame. Of course, it goes without saying, Drew Brees, who will be enshrined in the Hall of Fame in a couple of months. And also just other players just around this team that have made an impact, right? But when you think about Terron Armstead, you know, I'll start with him. I mean, when you look at Terron Armstead, you look at a guy who was a third-round pick. He ran the fastest 40 still to this day among offensive linemen. He ran a 4.7, right? That's something that still stands to this day. He was drafted back in 2013, and he was coming from a HBCU, right? Arkansas Pine Bluff, a school that I'm very familiar with, me being a graduate and an alumni of Jackson State University. We would play Arkansas Pine Bluff every single year. And, you know, it's not very easy for a guy who comes out of the SWAC to make a career in the National Football League. You have to go and date back to some of those legendary players who are in the Hall of Fame when you had these crazy stigmas that were going on around HBCUs, you know, when organizations didn't want to commit to these guys, right? But they were still some of the best players because some of these power conference schools did not want to recruit guys based on the color of their skin. Like, you got to go way back to the day, right? But when we're talking about SWAC football, it doesn't get recognized, you know, so much. But Terron Armstead was able to come out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. The New Orleans Saints invested a third-round pick in him, and he became a cornerstone player. Yeah, he was one of the best left tackles to ever play for the black and gold. A couple of years ago, he decided to go to the Miami Dolphins. He wanted to, in my opinion, probably wanted to cash in that final check, and also be able to play with some very talented players and protect Tua Tagovailoa. But everybody knows how much Terron Armstead means to the city of New Orleans, to the Saints team. He became one of the leaders on the offensive line. I'm not going to get into it about his injury history or anything like that because, when he was out there, he mattered. And, you play so long and you're battling in the trenches, eventually, you're going to have your little nicks and knacks. But Terron Armstead was one of the best left tackles when he was playing not only for the New Orleans Saints, but in the entire league. And, now he's transitioning into the media world. He has a really good podcast that I enjoy listening to. I don't think I miss an episode. He's really good at what he's doing. And, the sky's the limit for him in the media world. But the impact that he had with the New Orleans Saints when it comes to the fans and also just being on the field and protecting Drew Brees' blind side all those years, you cannot forget about number 72. So congratulations to him. And then, you have Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram came out of college with a lot of fanfare. Of course, we know that he was a Heisman Trophy winner, went to the University of Alabama. He just was a phenom. Like in his freshman year, I believe he had like 12 touchdowns. He wasn't even a starter, right? Mark Ingram was synonymous with college football during the time he was there. And when the Saints were able to jump back into the first round and draft Mark Ingram, it was, a lot of happy Saints fans. And yes, I will say that Mark Ingram's career did not start out the way that some Saints fans would like. He didn't have 1,000 yards and all that kind of stuff. And, maybe the expectations for Mark Ingram early in his career, some people had to temper, their expectations when it comes to Mark Ingram. But over the course of time, Mark Ingram became a really good polished running back for the New Orleans Saints. He became a very good, blocker. He became a very good pass catcher, especially in the screen game. I started to see towards towards the tail end of his first run with the Saints, he really became much better at running the screens. And, of course, we know about the combination between him and Alvin Kamara, that thunder and lightning combination where things really started to, click for Mark Ingram. But, I like Mark Ingram. I like the energy that he ran with. I like angry Mark Ingram. One thing about Mark, he gave you everything that he had. 1 week where Mark Ingram might have fumbled the football or might have made a mistake. You better know next week Mark Ingram is coming back with some fire and some passion. And that tells you a lot about a guy, right? Being able to overcome adversity, being able to bounce back after a rough outing. I can remember when Mark Ingram fumbled the football, I want to say once or twice in a game. And then the next week, the New Orleans Saints played against the San Francisco 49ers. And Mark Ingram just lost his freaking mind. He became angry Mark Ingram, but that just shows you the type of talent, the type of player that he is. And not only that, just his personality, man. He's so animated. He loves life, man. He loves football. He carries his emotions on his sleeve, man. And then on top of that, he'll make you laugh in the process, man. Always rooting for his teammates. Never strikes me as a person that was selfish on the field. I'm pretty sure if you're an NFL player, you have an ego. You might want to score touchdowns. You might want to have that celebration that you probably was working on for the last couple of weeks or whatever like that. But Mark Ingram always was cheering for his teammates. He was always a guy that was a we guy instead of a me guy. And, that's one of the reasons why he's beloved by Saints fans. He ended up going to the Baltimore Ravens, had a really good season with them. He went to the Texans, and then the Saints were able to get him back. And, he was able to, come back to the New Orleans Saints, which I feel like was justified. To me, I don't think Mark Ingram should have left in the first place, especially when you look at the numbers and the way things were lined up contractually. You would think that the Saints would have put a couple more dollars in there to bring Mark Ingram back. But everything happens for a reason. And Mark Ingram, when he did leave the New Orleans Saints, he was to all-time leading rusher. As we know right now, that belongs to Alvin Kamara, but he is the number 2 all-time, I'm talking Mark Ingram, rushing leader for the New Orleans Saints. And, congratulations to him also. So those are your 2 Saints Hall of Famers, 2 guys that were synonymous with some of the best years of Saints football and put a lot of smiles on the faces of the Who Dat Nation. And as the Saints are trying to transition and trying to figure out what type of team they are going forward, it's good to look back at some of the guys that have set the tone and have made the expectations for Saints football so high. These 2 gentlemen contribute to that. So congratulations to Terron Armstead and Mark Ingram. All right, so let me go ahead and read some of your comments here. Feel free to put them inside of the chat. We got Jerry says, congratulations to Terron Armstead and Mark Ingram being inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame last week. Yeah, man, it's just great to see those 2 guys in there. And, as years go by, you're going to start seeing more and more familiar New Orleans Saints players that we have grown to love throughout the years, right? You're going to see those guys come back and, take their bow and, and everybody be able to celebrate them. But these 2 players right here, we can remember their career from start to finish. And these guys have definitely been cornerstone players for the team. Slim says Ingram and Kamara with thunder and lightning. Yeah, I mean, they definitely had a really good, combination. They really complemented each other, right? We know that when Alvin Kamara was drafted in 2017, the Saints had Adrian Peterson, right? So you had Adrian Peterson, you had Mark Ingram, and you had Alvin Kamara. And at that time, Alvin Kamara was the odd man out. Alvin Kamara kind of became like a pleasant surprise. I think people started to see what Alvin Kamara could possibly be in preseason. I think that game where the Saints played the Chargers, and I think he had maybe like a 71-yard touchdown, I think people start to see his explosiveness. They seen like the way that he was able to run the ball and how he just made, just some of these runs look so easy to do. And I just think that, it made Adrian Peterson expendable, right? Because Adrian Peterson wasn't the Adrian Peterson of old. This wasn't the Minnesota Vikings early in his career, Adrian Peterson. This was towards the twilight of his career. And even at the time, Sean Payton said, when they were talking about Alvin Kamara, he says, I had to find ways to get this young man involved. And when they started to commit to Mark Ingram and they started to commit to Alvin Kamara, that's when you start to see that thunder and lightning dynamic, because they complemented each other so well. Alvin was a really good above average receiving running back, right? And then you had Mark Ingram, who was more that sledgehammer, short yardage back, but also just kind of a one-cut guy. He's not going to juke you like he's Barry Sanders or anything like that, but he will drop the shoulder and continue to run hard. So you had yourself a really good dynamic. I guess you can say they were David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs before they came along, right? And we all know about those classic interviews that they would do together, and they would just feed off each other. And those were some fun times, right? But, that was a good moment and good times in the running back room for the New Orleans Saints. Right now, the New Orleans Saints are still trying to replicate that. I want to say it's been like 10 seasons since the New Orleans Saints have had a 1,000-yard rusher. Like 10 seasons, that's insane. So the Saints are trying to look for a thunder and lightning dynamic. Maybe we can get that with Travis Etienne and Alvin Kamara this season. We'll see. But like I said, thunder and lightning, Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, they were definitely special to watch. Mark should never left. That's no lie, TJ. That is the truth. I agree. Like, he shouldn't have never left, man. When you think about the contract, I want to say, man, it was just a couple $100,000 that separated Mark Ingram from, moving on to coming back. I think there were some egos that were involved in that. I think from both sides. He shouldn't have never left. But when he did leave, he had his best number statistically. I want to say he had like 14 touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens. That's the season that he left. But he shouldn't have never left in the first place. He shouldn't have never left. And I think that if you are a Saints fan, if you are, like in that front office, if you were to be honest with yourself, you probably would say, like, you know what, this man shouldn't have never left the team, and he shouldn't have. Now, he shouldn't have left the team. All right. But those are your two Saints Hall of Famers, Mark Ingram, Terron Armstead, guys that stood out and definitely made an impact in the Saints world. But speaking of impact, these are two players that are trying to make an impact for their respective team, the Minnesota Vikings. You have yourself a quarterback battle between J.J. McCarthy and Kyler Murray. Now, we know that Kyler Murray was signed by the Minnesota Vikings this offseason, playing all of his career with the Arizona Cardinals, got himself a big-time contract there. But the injuries and the inconsistent play, the Arizona Cardinals decided to move on from Kyler Murray, right? And now they're trying to figure it out. You got Gardner Minshew out there. You got Jacoby Brissett out there. And now, you have the quarterback, Carson Beck, out of the University of Miami. So these three guys are competing for the Arizona Cardinals quarterback job. And then on top of that, you're trying to figure out, is one of these guys going to be able to bring you forward in Arizona? But, speaking of a guy that was supposed to bring the organization forward, that was J.J. McCarthy was supposed to be, right? The Minnesota Vikings made the commitment to J.J. McCarthy early, in the draft a couple of years ago. We know that he had the torn meniscus that cost him his entire rookie year. There were some flashes in preseason that had Minnesota Vikings fans optimistic, and everybody was just looking forward to seeing what J.J. McCarthy could possibly be. But then, he was able to come in and play in some games in 2025. And it started off, man, kind of rough. And then all of a sudden we know about that classic comeback on Monday Night Football where J.J. McCarthy, I want to say, had like 3 total touchdowns in that game. And everybody just thought, man, this can be the start of something special. And then the following Sunday night against the Atlanta Falcons, he just completely dropped the ball. I think that game on Monday Night Football, the first time the world was introduced to J.J. McCarthy with the late game heroics against the Chicago Bears, I think that a lot of people had high expectations and maybe they just thought that maybe something was there, but it was not, right? He had 11 touchdowns last season, 12 interceptions, turning the ball over consistently, and it just seemed like his confidence was shot. So what do you do, if you are the Minnesota Vikings in that case, right? What do you actually do? Well, you got to find somebody that's going to go out there that is going to be able to get the football to guys like Justin Jefferson. Now you have Juwan Jennings, who's coming over from the 49ers, and Jordan Addison, right? You got TJ Hawkinson still out there, man. You got yourself some guys that can make some plays, and you need yourself a quarterback that can actually do something, right? And if he's not doing anything, then it's going to make guys that have the talent and the ability to be able to make something happen, it's going to frustrate them. And when you look at guys like Justin Jefferson, right? This is a guy who the year before that, 1,700 yards receiving, and now, he flirting with 1,000. That doesn't make any sense, right? You have to believe that it's because of the inconsistent quarterback play. So what does Kevin O'Connell do? He signed Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has some questions that he needs to answer in his own right, but guess what? This is a guy that's started in the league, has been to the playoffs, that has, put a team on his back and has shown that he has what it takes to be a starting quarterback. And J.J. McCarthy takes a back seat. Now, this is extremely alarming to me because you got to think about J.J. McCarthy. Like, this is his third season, right? This is his third year in the National Football League, and the Minnesota Vikings are already telling the world that they made a mistake, right? You don't bring in a quarterback like Kyler Murray and not tell the world that you didn't make a mistake. Because if you are an organization, you're going to you'll probably bring in a veteran, but you're probably going to bring in a guy who is as least threatening as possible. For example, let's look at the Las Vegas Raiders, right? The Las Vegas Raiders this past offseason, they brought in Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins is a talented quarterback, respectable quarterback, but he's not an elite quarterback or anything like that. And nobody looks at him to be threatening the job of the number 1 overall pick, Fernando Mendoza, right? But this is a guy that can come in, understands his role, understands that he is the elder statesman, and his job is to get the young man prepared. And they purposely did this. They brought in a guy who understands his role, that's not going to rock the boat, that's going to sit back and be like, if you need me, I'm over here, but I'm going to go out here, give my best, but I'm also going to help this young man reach his full potential. They don't have that in Minnesota, right? It is understood that Kyler Murray is taking first-team snaps. And when you have a guy who is going into his third season, who you drafted as a top 10 pick, and this guy is sitting up here struggling, right? And you have already just told the entire world that we're going in a different direction, that speaks volumes about J.J. McCarthy. See, this isn't just about him playing on Sundays or Thursdays or whenever they play, right? This is about a guy that has shown inconsistencies in other areas. Like that's what I believe. I don't feel like a team just looks at a guy on Sunday and be like, I don't know if he has it or not. It has to be the way that he is, processing things. It's the way that he's studying, trying to become a student of the game. All of those things will have to come into play for a team to just completely give up on a guy after 3 seasons, right? I mean, you can honestly say 2, because his rookie year, he didn't play at all. So for them to be able to just turn the page and look towards Kyler Murray, that just tells you everything that you need to know about J.J. McCarthy. And, some of the verbiage and body language of J.J. McCarthy in some of these interviews, you can tell like he's frustrated. You can tell that he's looking at this as a competition. But to me, you have nobody to blame but yourself, right? This was your job to lose. They had Sam Darnold on this team a couple of years ago. I want people to understand this. They had Sam Darnold, the quarterback that just recently won the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. He was on the Minnesota Vikings team. They won, I want to say 13 or 14 games that season, right? But instead of them re-signing Sam Darnold, they decided to allow him to walk to go to Seattle because they committed to J.J. McCarthy. Now, think about this. You get rid of a quarterback, right? He goes to another team, and that team goes to the Super Bowl and wins it, right? Like, this could have been your quarterback in 2025, but instead you decided to go with the young guy, and he proved and showed that was kind of a mistake, right? So you have to believe that the organization doesn't like looking bad. Right. I talk about this all the time. Like, a lot of these organizations, like they build their organization on optics sometimes, like how things are perceived. Like, you can believe anything you want to, right? But, the way that we're going to position this thing, like, we got this thing under control. But it was clear that the way that J.J. McCarthy played in 2025 and the way that Sam Darnold played in 2025, it made the Minnesota Vikings organization look bad. So we think about some of these interviews that J.J. McCarthy has done. Him look like he upset and, talking about how him and Kyler Murray, they just like in the same classroom together. They don't have any type of friendship. They don't work together or anything like that. It's a competition. I can respect that, right? From a football perspective, right? It's about competition. But at the same time, you have nobody to blame but yourself. If you would have did the things that were necessary for you to be that starting quarterback that the Minnesota Vikings to rely on, Kyler Murray wouldn't exist in a Minnesota Vikings uniform. And that's what I have a problem with some of these players. They don't want to look in the mirror and just have a really good look and realize that they are the reason why some of these situations are happening. There's no way that a team that is going to invest in a top 10 pick that is going to go out here and wash their hands on a player. Think about this. He's only played 1 full season of starting quarterback, right? 1 season starting as a quarterback in the NFL. And by his second season where he can potentially be a starter, they said, we done with you. So how do you get to that point? You got to look at yourself in the mirror, right? Now, maybe this could be the chip on the shoulder that J.J. McCarthy needs. Maybe this can be what he actually needs in order to push himself to that next level, to being able to compete. maybe it goes back to those days at Michigan or whatever, right? When you had to compete for the starting job and you won out. But there would be no Kyler Murray if J.J. McCarthy would play better. And I'm very concerned about that because, like I said, I don't think an organization is just going to decommit to a guy that fast if there weren't some other things that were going on behind the scenes weren't happening. So this is a wake-up call for J.J. McCarthy. I mean, I'm seeing like reports, about possible trade and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, regardless to where you go, you're still going to have to compete. Nobody is just going to give you a starting job, especially after the sorry performances they've seen in 2025. So this is an opportunity for J.J. McCarthy to get back on the horse and ride that thing. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, Kyler Murray isn't blowing anybody's socks off. From what I hear, he's turning the ball over at practice. Now, you can look at that two ways. You can say it's him learning a new offense. Also, you can look at it like, man, maybe the Minnesota Vikings defense can be pretty doggone good. I'm always taken back, and I always have a cause to pause when I'm hearing about some of these quarterbacks in practice slinging the ball all over the place and making plays. The first thing I think about is, well, what is the defense doing? Like, are they in the right place? Is he putting his ball in tight windows because the coverage is so tight? Like, if he's having his way with the defense, well, I'm thinking like, man, how good is this team defense going to be? So the fact that the Minnesota Vikings aren't allowing these quarterbacks to just have a day on them, I think that speaks volumes to Brian Flores and his defense. But at the end of the day, I think that Kyler Murray more than likely will be the starter. I don't think that you bring this guy in for him to be a backup. And I definitely don't feel like you would even take this stance if in some ways you were kind of done with J.J. McCarthy. Now it's up to J.J. to try to rebuild his reputation because right now he's looking like a bona fide certified bust. And you got to call it that since Kyler Murray is indeed in town. All right. So there's that. All right. Let me go ahead and read some of your comments here. Feel free to comment on the Kyler Murray, J.J. McCarthy quarterback battle. Says, I don't blame him. Since out, I would have to. Says, a good thing AP didn't beat Peyton with the switch. Yeah, I mean, look, it was everybody knew about that look that he gave Sean Payton because Sean Payton took him out of the game. But I mean, you have to think like in a grand scheme of things, Sean Payton made the right decision by going with Alvin Kamara instead of Adrian Peterson. I mean, Adrian Peterson is a legend, no doubt about it. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But around the time he joined the Saints, he wasn't the same AP, man. I like Kyler Murray, but I think he's been having bad luck. He had put up with Cliff Kingsbury, Jonathan Gannon, injury prone, been inconsistent. Yeah, I mean, he's been inconsistent, Dalton, but that offensive line of the Arizona Cardinals has been horrible. Any Arizona Cardinals beat writer, any Arizona Cardinal podcast, any Arizona Cardinal player would tell you that the offensive line has been absolutely hot garbage, right? They have not been protecting this guy. So that is a priority. That is something that the Arizona Cardinals have invested in this offseason, trying to build up their offensive line. I think all teams can kind of speak to that unless you like the Philadelphia Eagles or something or the Detroit Lions. And even with Detroit, I mean, they got some of their key offensive linemen retiring and stepping away from the game. So all these teams out here trying to find stability on the offensive line, but the Arizona Cardinals offensive line was terrible. And, he has had his injuries. I think he had an ACL tear a few years ago. I mean, he only played I think he only started 6 games last season. J.J. McCarthy started in 10, right? So you definitely got to get that durability up. I mean, no guy goes out there and say, you know what, I want to be hurt this season, but you got to find ways to stay on the field and be available for your team. And the Arizona Cardinals, they have been struggling. That's the reason why Jonathan Gannon isn't the coach anymore. Cliff Kingsbury is offensive coordinator. That's the reason why. Like, these guys are not coaching this team right now because of the ineptitude of the franchise and what they have put on the field. So hopefully they can get things together. They're trying to go in a different direction. I don't know if Carson Beck will be the future of the team. He's looking really good out there. Gardner Minshew, you got Jacoby Brissett trying to get himself a little contractual deal. He's more of a journeyman backup, kind of give you a little stability until you figure out what you want to do at the quarterback position. But, them moving on from Kyler Murray, that just tells us that they just want a fresh start. And this is a fresh start for Kyler Murray. So now you have yourself a really good head coach / quarterback coach in Kevin O'Connell, who we have seen, put these quarterbacks in the right position to succeed. We have seen Kevin O'Connell take some quarterbacks that the NFL has left for dead, and they have put together some really good, solid performances, right? So you can say that Kevin O'Connell is instrumental at resurrecting the career of Sam Darnold, right? So maybe he can be able to do the same thing with Kyler Murray. Now, the question is, why can't he do it with J.J. McCarthy? I'm not ready just to write off J.J. McCarthy, because I just think that sometimes guys develop and grow at different levels. They have to learn how to be pros. Some guys come in more prepared than others. Some guys have to go through little learning curves in order for them to get better. So I don't want to just rush the judgment here, because he's still so young in his NFL career. But he's at a crossroads, man. He has a choice. It's rather you can go out here and try to grind and try to find the ways to become a better quarterback, or you can just accept what the NFL is telling you is you're not good enough. I hope I hope that he is going to get himself together, because, like I said, he's still very early in his NFL career for him to just accept the fact that people look at him as a bust. TJ, that's what JJ is used to. He's always been the best quarterback in the room and can't handle competition. That's what a lot of this, I don't want to get on my soapbox on that. That's another story for another day. When you look at like some of these collegiate players out here right now, like everybody wants to leave and go to another school when maybe they get beat out of a competition, right? And I got mixed emotions when it comes to NIL, right? Not the fact that the players are getting paid. I think that that's long overdue, but I do feel like it doesn't help these players overcome adversity. Like when you play football, like back in the day when I was in school, like before the whole NIL deal, and if you had an NIL deal, it was under the table, you know what I'm saying? But, like you had to go out there and compete, right? You had to compete. And when the coach come to you and say, we're going to put you in a starting rotation, man, it's like you won $1 million, right? Because you earned it. But now it's like, okay, I'm going up and I'm competing against this guy right here. He wins the competition. I'm mad. Let me go ahead and transfer to another school, right? It's not really teaching these young players how to deal with adversity. And I think that is one of the main reasons why a lot of these players kind of fall off when they get to the National Football League, because they were told their entire lives that I'm great. They have been told their entire lives that they are the best at something, that nobody can touch them. You get in a line, they're the fastest. You're doing vertical leaps. They jumping the highest. They're scoring the most touchdowns. They're getting the most attention. Well, if you go to a school like Alabama, LSU, Clemson, Florida State, you get what I'm saying? Like you're going up against guys that are 5 stars in their area, and they're just as good as you, if not better. So what are you going to do? Are you going to turn it up? Right? Are you going to turn it up, or are you going to try to, just accept the fact? And I think that that's what a lot of these young players are dealing with, because in the NFL, everybody's good. Everybody's fast. Everybody can jump high. Everybody can knock your head off, right? Everybody can do some amazing things in the NFL. And you just become from the toast of the town, not having to pull your wallet out for whatever respected university you come from, to just being another guy on the team. And some of these players, they just can't accept that, or they can't rise to the occasion. So in this case, when it comes to J.J. McCarthy, maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, people have been singing your praises in regards to how trash you may look at practice. Oh, you're going to get them tomorrow, slugger, right? But in the NFL, man, we ain't got no time for that. I mean, jobs are on the line, right? people are uprooting their families and stuff like that to go to these locations, and they got to keep that job by maintaining a level of success. If they don't, then they're going to get fired, right? And I'm not going to sit up here and waste my time and be spending years trying to get you together and it's deciding my fate, right? I mean, when I got a team that is capable of making a deep run in the playoffs, going to the Super Bowl, and I'm around here messing around with a guy that throws more picks than Razor Ramon, like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not doing this. Like, so, you know, you got to put your big boy pants on. Like the NFL will force you to put your big boy pants on. Not only the Cardinals' offensive line has been horrible, sad thing is they don't have good coaches since Bruce Arians left. Yeah, they haven't, you know. But a lot of people have their questions about the Arizona Cardinals ownership. That's been the issue. TJ, I think these coaches allow some of these players to come in feeling entitled because of their own hype. I think you end up with players like Caleb Williams and McCarthy when they're not challenged. And that's the thing. That's the thing. But I will say this about Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams was willing to be challenged by Ben Johnson. Like Ben Johnson and him were going at it, right? Ben Johnson had that mind frame in which this is why I feel like Chicago is going to be a threat for years to come. Ben Johnson got some Sean Payton in him. Like, he don't care how good you are. He don't care about the fanfare that you came in. Because on one hand, Caleb Williams probably came in coming out of USC. Everybody know about Caleb Williams, right? Been talking about this dude since he was at USC in Oklahoma, right? Oh, man, he can make all the throws. This is the second coming of Mahomes, yada, 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 this, that, and the third. And you come into the league, the number one overall pick, feeling like you're the savior of a franchise, right? And everybody's out here praising you and saying all these amazing things about you. Well, you got to go out there and prove it, right? You can't be out here throwing reckless passes across the field and no-look passes just because it looks cool. And Ben Johnson was like, hey, man, look, you're going to have to get into this playbook and understand what I'm trying to do. And when Caleb Williams finally accepted that, we see now that he's living up to his potential. Now, you know, everybody calling him the Iceman, and we seeing like some of these heroic throws, last minute, late game heroics, right? But that's because he accepted what Ben Johnson was trying to make him. And I expect for him to be much better this season because now you have an extra season with Ben Johnson as your coach, and you seem like you're getting on the same page. But, you know, Caleb Williams had to accept that, right? But when it comes to I don't know what's going on with J.J. McCarthy, but I do know this. I do not see teams, unless a player is just like damaged goods or something like that. Like they just hurt to a point where doctors are saying, like, man, we got to go in a different direction. I have never seen a team, for the most part, give up on a player like this fast. Like, it has to be something going on behind the scenes. Like, it has to be the work ethic. It has to be the way that he studies. It has to be something that this organization has seen from J.J. McCarthy for them to even put him in this position only 2 years of starting in the NFL. Like, something has had to happen in order for them to come to this conclusion. But I will say this, like you just said, King Arthur, you cannot come into the NFL entitled. The NFL will humble you. Every player that I have had a privilege of speaking with, they say the same thing. Man, the NFL gonna humble you, man. Like that I've been in circles. I've seen guys talking about this type of stuff. The NFL does not care how many awards you won in college. They don't care how locked down you were at the cornerback position, how good you were on the offensive line. They do not care. These guys are trying to feed their families. These guys are trying to compete. They don't care that you went to the big name school, right? I went to this school right here that may not have had a lot of fanfare, but guess what? You're going to have to kill me in order to beat me out for this particular position. That's the way that these guys are looking at it. And if you come in entitled, like you're the savior of a franchise, then guess what? Like, guys are going to humble you. So you got to put your big boy pants on. You got to take this thing serious, because if you don't, then you're going to be on the outside looking in. TJ, you think the coaches allow some of these players to come in? Or I think I already read that. But yeah, I think in some cases. But I will say this: if you accept the fact that a player is coming in entitled and you allow them to be entitled, you won't have a job for long. You won't have a job for long, because that is the start of the inmates running the asylum. That is what that is. Like, you have to run your team, and you have to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner, right? You want guys to be themselves. You want them to show their personality, but you also want to have control of your football team. And if guys are coming in, oh, I was the number 2 overall pick, number 3 overall pick, like, so what? How many number 1 overall picks have we seen, like, not paying out in the NFL? How many guys we seen 4th round picks end up being some of the best players on their team? Like, none of that stuff matters. Like, yeah, like, you win these big time awards and stuff, and, people come to your house. Yeah, I won the Belinda Koff Award. Oh, that's great. Something you can show your grandkids or something. But, man, who won the Belinda Koff Award in 2002? I don't know. Do you? Like, right offhand, without using Google. Like, that stuff doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's about what you're actually putting out there on the field. And if you're not producing, if you feel entitled, you're not going to be in the NFL for long. On what they say, TJ, don't get high on your own supply. Yeah, man, you got to be humble. You got to be humble. What you miss about football that's not here in the NFL today? What do I miss about what's going on today, or what used to be? I don't know, man. I don't really miss anything. I think that the NFL has been progressive. Like, I think a lot of steps that they've made is to better the product, to try to make things a little bit better. Like, some people might have their reservations about how some people may feel like the NFL is a little money hungry or something like that, and maybe they're willing to sell out for a few things. But look, that's with any business. Businesses are always trying to capitalize on as much money as possible. And, that's just the way that it goes. I mean, I can remember where, the NFL wasn't as popular. It was on television and stuff like that, but it was starting to really emerge as being something, right? And now I look at it now, I'm looking at it as a great opportunity for a lot of these young guys to be able to, feed their families and take care of themselves. And also, like, just a combination of not just the NFL, players, but also people that's around the NFL, like me doing this right now, right? And a couple of years ago, their podcast world didn't exist, right? So to me, I think that NFL is in a really good place. Now, there's some things that you can probably improve on. I mean, that's subject to certain people, what they feel. But to me, I just think that it's going in the right direction. I think that they're getting as much money as possible. And I think that, players are getting more money. And so they can be able to take care of their family. So to me, I think that the NFL is in a good place. I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, I missed the big hits and stuff like that, because when you start to meet these players and talk to them on a personal level and stuff like that, man, you don't want to see these players going out there getting their head taken off. Like, if you watch some of these games, man, watching these guys get knocked out cold, man, you don't want to see that. So I'm glad that the NFL is protecting these guys from some of these head injuries and stuff like that by doing some of these things. Now, it can improve, but you ain't gonna get no argument from me when it comes to that. What Saints player will improve this season? What Saints player will improve this season? I think Juwan Johnson might improve, this season. I think that he started to come on last season, with his connection with Tyler Shuck. I think that Juwan Johnson might end up improving. I think that Juwan Johnson can probably be flirting with 1,000 yards receiving this season. I think that he can. Also, when it comes to improving, I think you'll probably see Kool-Aid McKinstry get a little bit better, and Quincy Riley. I think Quincy Riley will take a step forward this season. Those are some players that I think that will probably improve. What's your thoughts on NFL moving to apps for money and not on free TV? Like I said, it's them trying to capitalize on, on some of these opportunities. That's what this world is about, man. Capitalism. Like, I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. Like, people are trying to get as much money as they possibly can. Is it fair to the everyday fan to have to buy all these different apps? But, probably not. But that's just how the world is now. Like, nobody's really watching cable television like that, right? I was watching this show on Netflix, right? It's called Resident Alien, right? And I'll just be binge watching shows, and it was on a Sci-Fi network. It had like 4 seasons, and I don't know about y'all, but you ever just find these shows on Netflix, and you're like, man, this show good, and all of a sudden you find out it was canceled, and it's like, oh, the ratings were bad, right? But I'm saying that to say this. The show Resident Alien was on the Sci-Fi network. I ended up like watching every episode. I liked it. And I was like, man, why didn't they bring this show back? And one of the producers was like, well, the show was good. It was like, but, cable television is just dying out. Like, more people are like watching apps. More people are, downloading apps instead of like just watching cable, like getting cable packages. Like, think about it. Like, how many of you right now have cable, right? Or how many of you just have Wi-Fi at your house and just got a bunch of streaming services like Amazon Prime and Netflix? Like, I mean, that's what I do. Like, shoot, I just bundle my streaming services, right? So that's what these organizations, they know what people are doing, right? So what they're doing, they're investing in some of these streaming services, right? And you combine a bunch of streaming services, it basically you have your own cable television, and that's the way that they're looking at it. So for a person to have to keep on looking, for all these different streaming services, I'm not a fan of that. But at the same time, I understand that the world is about streaming. Like, you have more people that watch YouTube than watching regular television. How I know? What are you watching me on right now? The majority of you watch me on YouTube. So, that's just the way that it goes, man. That's just the way that it goes. Like, sometimes, like, in order for one thing to be progressive, something else has to die out. Cam Jordan, I think, will have 5 to 7 sacks, which is still would be good for him, and he's a good run stopper. Yeah, I mean, getting 5 to 7 sacks with the role that Cam Jordan more than likely will have this season, I think that would be good. But I just think that Cam Jordan is going to push a lot of these young players, because Cam Jordan isn't just going to accept the fact that, oh, man, you're just going to be the elder statesman and mentor these guys. Nah, these players are going to have to come to practice every single day and put their best foot forward. Already read that. I think I read that too. Says, do you think Polk will be wide receiver 3? If not him, then who? No, I don't think that he's going to be wide receiver 3. I think Devon Vele will be wide receiver 3. I think that the Saints like what they saw in him prior to his injury. I think that he'll more than likely have a bigger role. I think that Jalen Polk will probably serve as, that 4th or 5th receiver on the team. And, I think that he'll probably get opportunities to make plays. But at the end of the day, I think your starting group will be Olave, Tyson, and Devon Vele. Haven't had cable for 4 years. Like I said, man, people ain't investing in no cable. Says, I have YouTube TV. Exactly, streaming service, right? Like I said, Prime Video, Netflix, Hulu. Right? These are the companies that people are investing in for live streaming. I mean, that's just what it is. So nobody's like investing in cable television. You got to think about that stuff. Like, while we're thinking about like, oh man, why the NFL doing this? Just think about it. Like, are you watching cable like that? Right? Or are you watching cable like that? No, probably not. Like, some of us are wasting money on cable. Some of us have cable packages, don't even watch cable. Don't even watch it. Or we have cable based on the fact that we just want to DVR something. It's not a good enough reason to have it, right? You're just wasting money. So combining things that you're interested in like different streaming services that you're interested in. For example, me, ESPN, like the ESPN app. Why do I have the ESPN app? Because I like wrestling, right? I want to be able to watch my favorite wrestling shows, right? Peacock, I want to be able to watch Saturday Night Main Event, right? My wife want to watch Traders or whatever like that on Peacock, so we combine these different interests that we have, and we create our own cable package. You don't believe me? Like, just go take a look at, like, on your phone, because a lot of us download these apps on our phone. Go to where it says subscription and go look at how many subscriptions that you have and how much money that you spend in each month on these subscriptions. Go take a look. And it's going to equate probably out to an actual cable package. So you could buy in the streaming services with the Wi-Fi service that you have is equaling to what you paid for cable during the time that you had it. I mean, I ain't trying to, this is about sports, folks, but I'm just being realistic here. When we're talking about why the NFL is committing to some of these streaming services, well, it's because everybody on them. So it's a matter of them taking advantage of the things that you take advantage of. But my final thought is very, very simple, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to these two topics that we discussed. Number one, congratulations to Terron Armstead and Mark Ingram making the Saints Hall of Fame. Long overdue. And when it comes to the Vikings quarterback competition, that will work itself out. I think more than likely it's going to be Kyler Murray to be the starter. It's going to be his job to lose. J.J. McCarthy, I didn't like the energy in some of those interviews that he had. It was almost like he was kind of pouting a little bit. But you can look at it in another way. Like, maybe this is the chip that he needs in order for him to be able to push his career forward. But all in all, the Minnesota Vikings, I expect for them to be a solid NFC team this season. We know that the Bears more than likely are going to try to take a step forward. The Detroit Lions are trying to figure some things out after missing the playoffs last season. And the Green Bay Packers, we know that they're going to be there as long as Matt LaFleur is there. He's going to have those guys playing at a high level. And that's important because the Saints are playing every last one of these teams this season, if you're a Saints fan, right? They're playing the NFC North. So to say, that you don't want to keep an eye on this, you might want to, because one of these quarterbacks are going to take the field to take on the New Orleans Saints this season. But thank you all so much for checking out the Straight Up TJ podcast. Once again, my name is TJ Jones. You can follow me on X at TJAY Jones 8. Also, make sure that you tune in to the Sleeper Saints podcast that I do every single week, talking about the New Orleans Saints. We're going to discuss a little bit more about the Saints Hall of Fame. We're going to talk about Tyler Shuck and him getting together with Drew Brees, trying to get a little camp going for himself. What's that saying about Tyler Shuck and what we should expect from him in year number 2? And also, we got training camp coming up in the next couple of days. What will we be looking forward to in training camp? And also, you got to think about Chris Olave still not having a contract. Will he go to training camp? Will he take part in activities at training camp if a deal isn't done by then? We'll get into all that. So make sure that you go to youtube.com, search Sleeper Saints. Thank you so much. And until next time, I'll see you down.
DJ, yeah. Straight up. Let's go. Welcome to Straight Up TJAY. Tap in, sit back, press replay. Been locked in with the Saints on a weekday. Now we talking every sport, every big play. Years on the grind, now we level up the view. From the dome to the world, get a better look at you. No script.